G'day friends, welcome to today's video, MERMAY Day 8, 2018. Hope you're having a great start to your week. I know Monday is a bone of contention for a lot of people. A lot of people don't like to go back to work on a Monday, especially if you've had a great weekend. I can't relate these days because honestly all my days kind of seem the same. So there's no real difference between a Saturday and a Tuesday for me, but I do understand what that was like. I have memories of that, so hope you're enjoying yourself nonetheless, and looking forward to your hump day, which is then a few days closer to your weekend again. Anyway, you're here to join me for Mermaid, but today I just wanted to get back to my roots. I wanted to revisit a lot of how I started journaling. So, you know, layering down a background, doing some stenciling, some stamping, some patterns, and then, you know, kind of painting on top. This is a homemade foam stamp, which I believe there's a random video floating around, maybe on my other Instagram, or maybe I have a personal Instagram as well that I don't ever really post to, but I think that was where the start of Burke Creative came from, or maybe right back at the start of this Instagram I have now. Maybe I re-uploaded it, but I have like a little step-by-step of how I made these foam stamps. This is before I had a YouTube channel, so it was like, it's very basic, it's very quick, but it kind of makes me laugh just to bring all this stuff back out again and remember that this is some of the stuff that literally started my journey in mixed media arts and crafts and etc, etc. So this was a really fun departure, just getting really loose, just painting, basically just layering with acrylics and you know, some pastel and that pastel pencil I used to outline the drawing, but I also went in with watercolor at the end and had this really beautiful effect on the seaweed on the right. So be sure to check out that if you're interested in how to mix you know, kind of matte acrylics with watercolor. I think watercolor will probably dry on acrylics that are a little bit glossier, but if you're working in a journal, gloss you know, gloss finishes typically become sticky and will stick your pages together. So always try to go for a matte, either a gouache or an acrylic paint. Gouache is just, some of them aren't reactive with water, but it's basically just a highly pigmented watercolor. It's a water-based medium, so you just kind of water it down and have a play with it. A lot of people don't like gouache, they think it can be really fiddly, but I think it has some really great applications, especially for getting watercolor effects that are very layered and controlled in a certain way. So because once it's dry, the version I have is acrylic gouache, so it's kind of like an acrylic mix, so there's a plasticizer in it which will harden it if it dries on the pan, and you won't be able to re-wet it, but it still has the same properties of gouache in that you can dilute it down and have it almost be a watercolor. Just very pigmented. Anyway, but maybe I'll go into a video about gouache another day. I have played with it before and shared some of my thoughts on it because I don't use it regularly, but it is something that's actually really good to use for art journaling. Or just go the easy way and just get some matte acrylics. These ones I'm using today are from Target. They're the Handmade Modern. They have been working really well for me. I have passed them over so many times in the store. I've slept on them. I've just thought, they're kids' paints, I don't know, because they do brand them as well as the Kid-Made Modern paints. So I don't know which company is private labeling them, but I've never come across these specific ones before, and they do say satin finish, but they're a matte. They're not satin at all. So I've been really loving them. I don't know, the colors I have are matte, but I don't know about the rest. Maybe some of them are a little satiny, but there's some metallic ones, there's some glitter. I think the glitter one looks horrendous. I wouldn't use that, but yeah, go and have a check them out if you're in the States and you go past Target. There are $2 a pop, really great color selection. Here's the thing. I want to talk about something really weird today, but it's something that would relate to people that scan their artwork, and it's something that's so probably boring, so if you want to skip the whole thing or just turn my voice off, please feel free. I think it's fascinating because I never hear people talk about it very often, but scanning fluorescent colors. Now, I've heard that people have had trouble with it before, and believe me, I've had my own trouble with it, and this is a really good example of that because this pink here, this hot pink, there's a fluorescent dye in it, right? And when you're scanning fluorescence, there are a bunch of different scanners out there. Like, I'm not going to say all of them are the same, but they either work with a fluorescent light, you know, like that light is the one that they scan with, or they work with a light that picks up on red, greens, and blues, like an RGB. They're actually called a CIS sensor. So usually, like this all-in-one printer like I have is a contact image sensor. So that light that goes across the that light that literally flashes across the image as you're scanning it will pick up on red, green, and blue in the colors, and it will turn that digital information into into a digital file. So it's got to be able to pick up the colors that it sees with that light sensor. With the other one, it's called a CCD, I believe it's called. It's a charge coupled device, and that one usually picks up with a fluorescent light. So here's the thing, when your eyes work, you see a visible spectrum of colors, and there's colors before the colors that we can see, and there's colors after the colors that we can see. The ones afterwards are ultraviolet, and that happens, I mean, it's a little scientific, and I hate science, but basically the ultraviolet light is what's hitting that, and it loses some energy, and it gets excited, and then it has some energy, and it charges, and then it loses some energy, and what it emits back out is what we see as fluorescent color. And the chemicals that they put in paint to have that same effect, they're fluorescent, but our eyes can see that spectrum of ultraviolet light. Now, your scanner probably can't. If it's one of these all-in-one scanners, or rather inexpensive one, or I don't know, just one that if it has one of those CIS sensors, it's probably not going to pick up on on that ultraviolet spectrum, so you're not going to get those fluorescent colors in your final scanned piece. Here's the thing, if you have Photoshop, you can absolutely use the RGB or the hex codes to transform that color in Photoshop. So for me, all these areas of hot pink, I just went into Photoshop, I selected that color range, and I just replaced the color with the hot pink that it didn't scan as, because this scanned as a very dull purple. If the color is too close to another color, you're probably going to have a big issue trying to replace that color. Otherwise, there are scanners out there that happen to be able to do this, that use a fluorescent light that picks up on the ultraviolet rays, that will turn that digital information into a really bright fluorescent color on your screen. But just in case you had never noticed that before, or you're trying to scan your work for longevity and you don't know what's happening and you think it's your fault, it's probably not. It's just the light that's used when it picks up the scan. It's that light isn't our eyes. Our eyes can pick up a spectrum of colors that light can't pick up. Some of those lights can pick up a spectrum of colors that we don't necessarily see. If you're colorblind, I'm sorry, this is probably going to confuse you, but basically, I mean, we all kind of see colors differently, right? Depending on what our eyes are able to pick up. So I could tell you that that's a bright pink, but your bright pink might look a little different to my bright pink. I think there are more men diagnosed with color blindness than women. I have a very weird area on the yellow-green spectrum that I just can't distinguish between. It's not like I can't see the color, I just don't know if it's yellow or green. So color is a really interesting thing to talk about, because essentially it's the light that your eyes are picking up. So at the end of the day, I just kind of wanted to hit on that point, that if you're scanning fluorescent colors, please don't be discouraged. You can Photoshop them back in if you don't lose the areas of that fluorescent color. Like if this, because the area, it's scanned in like a light purple, which was very close to the light purple that's next to it on the tail. So luckily it was just different enough to not have to, for me to have to go in individually, but you can re-Photoshop the colors in. But sometimes you won't even know if some of the things you're looking at have that fluorescent dye in it. So just kind of look at the color, and if it is something you want to avoid having to do in post later, I would just recommend replacing it with something that doesn't have any fluorescence to it. So instead of using that hot pink, you might want to use a really bright magenta. Still kind of risking it not scanning it properly. Ultimately, you could just get one of those scanners that do it, but I think for most of us that have all-in-one scanners, it's not an automatic feature of your scanner to be able to pick up ultraviolet rays. So anyway, I just thought that would be a really interesting thing to share with you today. Whether you like to scan your images for longevity, whether you like to do digital reproductions of your art as prints, whether you like to scan them for collage sheets, or I don't know, whatever you would like to be scanning your artwork for, if you use a lot of bright colors and you find that your reproduction isn't coming out the same way, it is most likely the fact that the light the scanner's using just isn't capable of catching those colors. You got to remember that scanner is doing all it can to turn that whatever it's perceiving into a digital file, and it's got to choose colors for it. And if it can't figure out what it is, because of the light that it's bending off is not making sense to it. It's just going to pick a color. So you never know what it's going to turn out with. But it's just that fluorescence is a part of that visible spectrum that our eyes can see, but not necessarily the light from your scanner. Unless your scanner light is fluorescent, or like I said, one of those, you can pick up on the ultraviolet rays in that color spectrum, which there are scanners out there that do a good job of that. There are scanners out there that do a horrendous job of that. I find at the end of the day, it's really not one of those things that's a deal breaker for a scanner, especially if you have Photoshop. You could always put the color back in, and there are codes for fluorescent colors, apparently, RGB and hex codes, so you can go and research that. I just eyeball it. If it's a bright enough pink for me on the screen, that's good for me. But yeah, something just to note, especially, I mean, for me specifically, because I scan every one of these and put them up onto Instagram, and I just noticed that scanning over time, like some colors are really great, but it's anything that where there's a fluorescent dye that's been used, like a fluorescent chemical in the pigment, it struggles. So just wanted to share that with you today, and hope you have a great day. I'll see you again tomorrow for day 9. I also have a journal with me that I'm about to film from my day at Pixar Fest yesterday. So be on the lookout for that too, I guess. Bye.